YouTube, what's poppin'? That's your boy T Ski, and I'm back with another reaction. So boom, today we're reacting to Remaking My NBA GOAT Pyramid by Jimmy High Roller. You already know how the Jimmy High Roller videos go, so you know what I mean, we about to get right into it. So remember to comment, like, and subscribe. Let's get right into this reaction. And boom!
About 3 years ago, I released my GOAT Pyramid, featuring 30 of what I believe to be the greatest NBA players of all time. And it's okay.
Yo, I ain't gonna lie, comment who y'all think y'all GOAT is though. Who's y'all GOAT? I ain't gonna lie. To me, my GOAT my GOAT is LBJ, LeBron James, King James. What more can I say? That's my GOAT. I feel like LeBron really he really the GOAT of this shit, man.
But it could.
I don't want to talk too much, you know, and start going on some fucking, you know what I mean, rant some shit. But like, you feel me? I really think that LeBron really is the best at this shit. You can't deny greatness, man. You can't deny greatness. LeBron really is one of the greats to do this shit. And yeah, if you still think it's Jordan or some shit, you probably some old head. Man, you probably gonna put in Wilt or like motherfucking, who else is there? Wilt or probably Kareem, maybe because of points, but you know what I mean, it's just LeBron literally is the best player to ever do everything. So it's kind of like, I think that's just a unanimous GOAT, to be honest.
It could use some work. So today, we're going to be updating the
And
NBA
longevity.
GOAT Pyramid.
Longevity is definitely important.
Today's video is brought to you by SeatGeek. A new NBA season is upon us. Just look at it. Ain't it beautiful? And with the season underway, SeatGeek is here to get us back in on the action. Check this out. Just download the SeatGeek app and use the promo code Jimmy to get $20 off your first order. SeatGeek makes buying tickets easier than ever before,
Jimmy,
with the rating system that lets you know which tickets are a good deal and which tickets are a bad deal. If it's green, that's a banger. You're getting a good deal. Red, not so much. I've been using SeatGeek for years. It's simple, it's easy, and it's a surefire way to get the best deal for your tickets. Whether it's a concert, basketball game, football, baseball, festival, SeatGeek's got it all. Download the app, use promo code Jimmy, and get $20 off your first order today. Shaq shared this basketball GOAT pyramid on Instagram. And I only know this because people were tagging me in the comments thinking it was mine. But it's not. The dead giveaway was LeBron being on tier 3. Also, current day Steph on tier 4 was a massive red flag. And a pretty solid player by the name of Hakeem Olajuwon was nowhere to be found on this pyramid at all. So, as cool as it would be to have Shaq share some content from the channel, this NBA GOAT pyramid is from someone else. But it did get me thinking. With all of the events that have taken place over the last 4 NBA seasons, I think it's time we update our GOAT pyramid. So here's the pyramid I made 3 years ago, May 23rd, 2019 to be exact. Which means since this video was released, 4 new teams have been crowned champions, 4 MVPs have been awarded, and there has been 3.5 seasons worth of NBA context to consider for our new pyramid. Now I want to keep this new pyramid at 30 players like our original one. So if I add any players, I unfortunately have to take players off as well. And just like with my
Hold on, criteria for my NBA GOAT pyramid. I'm gonna read this for y'all if y'all don't feel like reading. I'm gonna get this off. So peak, how good a given player was when they were at their absolute best. A player's peak can often hold more weight than longevity, but this isn't always the case. Skill set, how skilled was a player at their given position. Overall, factoring in skill set allows for all-time talented players who have underachieved in their career to still have consideration for the pyramid. For example, players like Charles Barkley, Allen Iverson, and Tracy McGrady. Accomplishments, how much a player achieved in their career in terms of awards, for example, MVPs, championships, scoring titles, etc. This factor plays the biggest role on who makes the pyramid. And era, last but not least, each era of the NBA is drastically different, so we must factor in the years a player was active. For example, if 2 players have identical resumes, but one played in 1960s and the other played in the 2000s, the most recent player will get the edge, and I agree with that. So peak, accomplishment, skill set, wow, that's crazy, skill set, and era. The pyramid will feature 30 players across 5 tiers.
My original GOAT
Jimmy,
pyramid, there are a few
boy.
factors I'm going to be considering throughout this process. A player's peak, which I value more than longevity, their accomplishments and hardware, their skill and ability, and even the era that they played in. And of course, just like with my original GOAT pyramid, these selections are all based on my personal opinion. So with that out of the way, let's make some changes to this pyramid. So first things first, I have to make one massive adjustment to the top of this pyramid. Some may agree with it, some may not. But after winning his 4th championship and 4th Finals MVP while climbing every all-time leaderboard over the last 4 seasons, LeBron James has earned a spot in Tier 1. Because at this point, the all-time discussion has virtually become Michael Jordan, LeBron James, and then everyone else. I still have MJ as the GOAT, but the gap between MJ and LeBron feels smaller than the gap between LeBron and whoever comes next. So I feel this change was necessary and well earned. But that leaves us with 3 players on Tier 2.
But I feel like MJ really just had a really like good peak though. Compared to LeBron, yeah. LeBron has longevity, but Michael Jordan has the peak, like in all honesty.
2. And that just looks weird. So when considering peaks and accolades and impact on the game and every other factor I can conjure up, I've decided to move Bill Russell and Larry Bird up to Tier 2. In our original pyramid, I had Magic on Tier 2 and Bird on Tier 3. But with LeBron moving up, this gives room for Bird and Magic to be on the same tier, as they should be. And Bill Russell, 11 rings, greatest defensive player of all time, there's not much to be said here. Now there's 2 players in particular who have solidified their legacies over the last 4 seasons and have earned spots on Tier 3 with Shaq, Hakeem, Duncan, and Wilt. Those players are, of course, Steph Curry and Kevin Durant. Since 2019, Steph has proven without a shadow of a doubt that he's the greatest shooter of all time. And after winning his 4th championship and 1st Finals MVP last season, he's made the jump into Tier 3. Steph's brilliance and consistency season after season has extended his prime past where I think most fans would have ever considered. Now in his 13th season, at 34 years old, he's not only one of the best players in the league, he's putting together arguably the best season of his historic career. And the same could be said for Kevin Durant. He's got all the hardware, a league MVP, 2 championships, and 2 finals MVPs. But what has bumped Durant from Tier 4 into Tier 3 is his relentless consistency as a generational talent. Since 2019, he's made 2 more All-NBA teams, while averaging 29, 7, and 6. And this has earned him the jump from Tier 4 to Tier 3. And that brings us to Tier 4, which has some pretty major changes to it. And our first change comes with John Stockton, who gets demoted into Tier 5, which puts him at about the 5th or 6th greatest point guard of all time, behind Magic, Steph, Oscar, and Isaiah. Scottie Pippen also got demoted to Tier 5. I made this decision because despite Scottie's critical role throughout the Bulls dynasty, his talents as an individual player just don't warrant him a spot amongst players like Oscar Robertson, Karl Malone, and Julius Erving. And unfortunately, Dwayne Wade and Isaiah Thomas get demoted into Tier 5 as well. All-time great players. But being in Tier 4 means a player is, at worst, a top 21 player of all time. And I just don't consider Wade or Isaiah to be of that caliber. But I would consider them both to be top 30 players of all time, with similar relatively short but brilliant peaks and playoff heroics throughout their careers. And with these changes, Tier 4 becomes a barren wasteland with only 3 players. So we've got some promoting to do, starting with Jerry West. 12 All-NBA teams, Finals MVP, and 5 All-Defensive Team selections with career averages of 27, 6, and 5 a game. The only other players in NBA history to achieve these career averages are LeBron James and Kevin Durant. So the logo gets the bump into Tier 4. My next promotion goes to Moses Malone. 3-time league MVP, a Finals MVP, and one of the greatest rebounders the game has ever seen. Honestly, he should have never been in Tier 5 to begin with, so let's put him where he truly belongs. And my last pair of promotions goes to Dirk Nowitzki and Kevin Garnett. The individual dominance of both KG and Dirk that spanned over 2 decades is matched by only a handful of all-time greats. But if not their sustained excellence over the course of 21 seasons, it was their massive peaks that earned them a spot in Tier 4. 2 of the most skilled, versatile, and imposing big men the game has ever seen. Which leaves us with Tier 5 and some tough decisions to make. There are only 2 players that made my original GOAT pyramid that did not make the cut in my new pyramid. And those players are Bob Pettit and Allen Iverson. But with all these adjustments, there are now 2 spots open for 2 new players. Of all the players who missed the cut the first time around, the players who I considered for my new pyramid were Giannis Antetokounmpo, Nikola Jokic, James Harden, Chris Paul, and Kawhi Leonard. Of all the active players in the NBA, aside from LeBron, Steph, and Durant, these are the only players who even have a shot at making the pyramid. And since my original pyramid 3.5 years ago, Nikola Jokic has made 4 All-NBA teams, 3 of them being first-team selections. He's won back-to-back MVPs, he's led the Nuggets to the conference finals, and he's put up 2 of the most historically efficient and productive seasons in league history. It's only a matter of time before Jokic joins the GOAT pyramid. But at the moment, it's just a bit too soon. Now for the case of James Harden, I had to sit and really think about his potential addition to the pyramid. Harden had one of the highest offensive peaks in league history, averaging 31, 8, and 6 a game over the course of 6 seasons. He's won an MVP, he's made 7 All-NBA teams, and he's just one of 7 players in NBA history to win a scoring title and an assist title. But where James Harden falls short compared to other players on the pyramid is his performance in the playoffs. He just hasn't broke through on the biggest stage, and the heliocentric offense that allowed him to put up such unbelievable stat lines became a weak point to his teams in the postseason. So for now, James Harden does not crack the GOAT pyramid. The next player I considered was Chris Paul, one of the most complete point guards in recent years. And despite his lack of playoff success, he has managed to completely transform every team he's been a part of. CP3 is a tricky one because, as I touched on before, if you compare Chris Paul to John Stockton, who is in tier 5 on my pyramid, their careers are almost identical. And after CP3's first trip to the finals last season, their overall numbers and accomplishments only become more and more similar with time. Chris Paul had a higher peak, but Stockton's record-breaking ability to generate offense for nearly 2 decades, while being a lockdown perimeter defender, gives him a razor-thin edge over CP3, in my opinion. So for now, Chris Paul doesn't quite crack tier 5, which leaves us with the 2 new additions to my GOAT pyramid, Giannis Antetokounmpo and Kawhi Leonard. Now, since my original pyramid, which was released just before the end of the 2019 season, Giannis has went from a great, young, ascending player to a certified all-time great. In just 3.5 years, Giannis won a championship, 2 MVPs, a Finals MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, 4 All-NBA first teams, 4 All-Defensive first teams, and an All-Star Game MVP, while averaging 30 points, 12 rebounds, and 6 assists per game. That's a pretty solid 3.5-year stretch for the big man. So I had to add Giannis to the pyramid, and I'm going to put him comfortably in tier 4. And with our second and final addition, Kawhi Leonard is added to tier 5. My original pyramid was created 3 weeks before Kawhi won his second championship and second finals MVP, which led to his greatness stock skyrocketing. Now, Kawhi is a tough player to rank among any all-time scenario because when he's playing, he's one of the greatest players to ever lace up. But over the last few seasons, he just hasn't laced up a whole lot. But it's impossible to look past his 2 finals MVPs and his run as the best two-way player in the NBA. So Kawhi gets added to the pyramid, but just barely, sneaking into tier 5. And there it is, my updated NBA.
Damn, so at tier 1 we got LeBron and MJ. Tier 2 we got Bill Russell, Kareem, Kobe, Larry Bird, and Magic Johnson. At 3 we got Shaq, Hakeem, Tim Duncan, Wilt the Stilt. I was about to say Wilt the Tilt. I'll be calling him Wilt the Tilt. I feel Wilt the Tilt is saucy, but it is what it is. We got Curry and KD. Tier 4 we got Jerry West, Oscar, Karl Malone, Moses Malone, Julius Erving, Greek Freak, Dirk Nowitzki, and KG. And in tier 5, last but not least, we got D-Wade, Isaiah Thomas, Scottie Pippen, John Stockton. I think this is Elgin Baylor. I think. What's his name? David Robinson, Charles Barkley. I'm not even sure who this is. To keep it a stizzy. And Kawhi. So, boy, I fake fuck with this. I ain't gonna lie. Yo, bro, from recent years, well, if we're talking about recent, I would agree with Giannis being at tier 4 and Kawhi. But if we're talking about, like, really, like, overall, I'll put Kawhi first before Giannis. I think Kawhi proved a lot, if we're going to be honest. But if we're talking about, like, in recency, like, what you've recently done, then, yeah, Giannis type timing. Yeah. What was it? I actually agree with this. I agree with this. Looking at it, yeah. Everyone is at a different caliber. Then, yeah. I agree with this.
NBA GOAT pyramid, and I want to point out a few interesting things that I noticed throughout the process of making this. If we break down the pyramid by position, there are 6 point guards, 3 shooting guards, 8 small forwards, 6 power forwards, and 7 centers featured on the pyramid. I initially thought centers would have the largest presence here, with big men running the league for nearly 6 decades, but turns out a well-rounded, versatile wing has been the ideal archetype for a potential NBA great. If we break the GOAT pyramid down by the decade that each player was drafted in, then we'll find that among all players who made it onto the pyramid, 4 of them were drafted in the 50s, 3 were drafted in the 60s, 2 were drafted in the 70s, a whopping 10 players were drafted in the 80s, 5 in the 90s, 4 in the 2000s, and 2 in the 2010s. And since most players peak in the decade after they were drafted, it could be said that the 90s were the best era for NBA basketball, or at least the era that featured the most all-time great talent. Giannis is the youngest player featured on this pyramid at just 28 years old, completely bypassing Tier 5 altogether and landing on Tier 4 after just 9 seasons in the NBA. This puts Giannis somewhere between the 15th and 20th best player all time. Giannis's ascent amongst the greatest players of all time was pretty quick, but we've seen a rapid climb to basketball royalty like this before. Back in 1996, the NBA announced the 50 greatest NBA players to commemorate the league's 50th anniversary. And despite some backlash on the selection, a 24-year-old Shaquille O'Neal was selected as a top 50 player all time after just 4 seasons in the NBA. The second youngest player that was selected for that exclusive Greatest 50 club was Scottie Pippen, who was 31. Back in 2009, sports writer and analyst Bill Simmons released his original basketball pyramid that featured 96 players. At the time, LeBron James was just 24 years old in his 6th NBA season. He hadn't won a league MVP yet, he had only made 1 trip to the finals at that point, and he just hit his peak. But a young LeBron not only made Bill's GOAT basketball pyramid, he was already so transcendently good that Simmons selected him as the 20th greatest player in NBA history. And after the last half-decade Giannis has put together, he has slingshotted himself onto the same trajectory. Now I have to mention the handful of players that just narrowly missed the cut. Those players were Steve Nash, Patrick Ewing, Allen Iverson, Jason Kidd, Bob Pettit, Bob Cousy, James Harden, Chris Paul, Nikola Jokic, and George Mikan. All great players, but when the spots are limited to just 30, the criteria to make the GOAT pyramid is a hefty one. I imagine if we redo this pyramid again in 5 years, we'll see Jokic on here, we might see Luka Doncic on here, or possibly James Harden and Chris Paul. But for now, this is my new, and I think improved, NBA GOAT pyramid. Let me know what you think. Which players are too low? Which players are too high? Who was left out that you think should have made the cut? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, until next time.
Damn, that's crazy. How y'all feel about that? How y'all feel about that? How y'all feel about that GOAT pyramid? I pretty much agree with it though. No funny shit. I pretty much agree with it. I think for right now that list is pretty accurate. You know, in the next couple of years it's definitely gonna change, you know what I mean? But for right now that shit was valid though. Yeah, I agree with it though, to be honest. Some changes I think I would make though. I think I would make a little change, some changes, but generally speaking, I dead agree with this. So you know what I mean. Tell me what y'all think about it. Who's in a couple of tiers that y'all think should be in? You know, what y'all switch up, like Jimmy Howler said. Let me know, and you know, have discussion on whatnot. So I appreciate all y'all for watching. Thank you for watching the video. You know what I mean. Remember to comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.